Hello, everyone. Welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himvara, and today I'm going to be talking about something that, well, if you watch my channel, it would make sense that I'm talking about it, but I've never reviewed a movie before, but that's going to change today. I'm going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. The beginning part will be spoiler free, and most of this video will probably be spoiler filled. So I was able to watch this movie a couple days early. It releases on the 31st, at least in the United States. I think that's the worldwide release date. But there was a special screening about an hour and 10 minutes from where I live. And, instead of waiting a couple days and going 5 minutes from my house, I decided to drive hour and 10 minutes. And I did get some special stuff. Besides watching the movie a couple days early, they did have this little poster, um, some promotional poster of Chumbershot and some displacer beasts and the black dragon that appears very momentarily in the movie, by the way. And then the adventurers down here. Um, though, looks like there is no Simon in this, which is a little disappointing, but whatever. That's pretty cool. And it also came with a cloth map, which is actually the one that's behind me on the screen right now. This little cloth map of Faerun. I like how much of Faerun they get on here since you don't really see much of it in 5th edition. It goes all the way up to Chisanta and Aglarond, which is not labeled for some reason. Um, they all, I don't know where Thay is either on here. So, which is interesting because Thay is kind of important in the movie, but whatever. There's also like the noticeable like monster that's erased and like I don't know if you can see that in Tourmish. Yeah, you can kind of see that. Um, there's a monster that's erased there. So, but overall, if I were to give like whether I enjoyed, just so I don't keep you waiting, whether I enjoyed the movie or not, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it more than I did not enjoy it. So I enjoyed it. All right, that's my overall scores. I enjoyed it. I don't do scores. I don't do ratings. I can tell you a lot of stuff that I enjoyed about it without the spoilers. I thought it was pretty funny, and not like it's pretty cheesy, but like it really gets the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons down pretty well, right? And there's a lot of cool stuff to see the Forgotten Realms come to life, right? I'm a big Forgotten Realms fan. I talked to Ed Reed on Wood on the channel. I've run my blog for years about reading Forgotten Realms stuff. I've done plenty of Forgotten Realms content on this channel. Um, I'm a big fan, so it's awesome to see it in the Forgotten Realms. It's also awesome to see Neverwinter in particular because that's one of my favorite places, at least particularly on Sword Coast, which is basically what 5th edition Forgotten Realms is. I have my problems with 5th edition Forgotten Realms. Uh, that will lead to one of the problems I actually had with the movie, but that's probably going to be in the spoiler section. But overall, I liked the feel of it. I mean, I liked. There's this really cool thing right near the beginning of the movie where it zooms out because there's like a travel sequence. It's really short, right? But there's a travel sequence and it zooms out from them and then it shows the map all of a sudden. I was like, oh my goodness, guys, that is Faerun. You know what I mean? Like I'm watching a movie set in Faerun, and I thought that was so awesome. Um, the magic is cool. It feels very much like Dungeons and Dragons magic. I mean, I guess if you wanted to be really picky, there might be some problems some people have, of course, especially with the wild shape. But it was really fun. The barbarian, there's a paladin who kind of act like a lot of barbarians and paladins act around the gaming table sometimes. And then we have other stuff like the Red Wizards of Thay, which are a popular bad guy. That's cool to see them. So specifically Zastam, who's not the main bad guy because you couldn't really kill off Zastam, so makes sense. Um, and then there's other things like the practical effects. Also, is one thing I want to mention. There's Tabaxi, there's Aarakocra, there's Dragonborn, and they're just in costumes. There's a giant fish. It's an animatronic, right? Uh, it's pretty cool, honestly. I like how they went for practical effects. I'm not sure how well practical effects generally age, but it's always cool when you see them because sometimes CGI ages worse. So yeah, so I liked that. I liked how it was very specific. Like we get to see at one point, like Simon, who's the sorcerer in the party, can't cast a spell because he his mouse is covered, right? So he can't do the verbal component, right? So it's not just a flick of the wrist and magic goes. Um, there's also a point in the movie where the bad person is like has cast a spell and then she's just kind of standing there for a minute and you're like, what else is she doing? Well, you realize that when she gets hit, that the spell she was doing stops. It's like, oh, it was a concentration spell, right? So, which is cool. Um, but yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. I laughed a lot. I got teary eyed at one point, even though um, I knew it wasn't going to be terrible. But I'll explain that in a second. So we're going to get into um, uh, we're going to get into spoilers now. Okay. So, but overall, I enjoyed it, and I think a lot of people will probably watch it and probably enjoy it. And my biggest issues, which I'll get into the spoiler part, are I think largely because I'm a big Forgotten Realms fan, um, and not specifically a Dungeons and Dragons fan. Okay, so the things I like first before I get into the issues, there's a scene where you see Saloon in the sky, which is the moon. You see her tears. Now, admittedly, I think her tears could have been better looking, but it's still really cool, that they got that detail down. The map thing I already talked about. They go to the Underdark at one point, and there's some cool adventures there. But it's really cool just at first seeing them like walk in the Underdark, and think, wow, like I've been there. You know what I mean? Like I've been to the Underdark, playing with friends and with brothers or whatever. Or like my one friend who passed away last year. A lot of the gaming we did was in Forgotten Realms, and it was specifically in the Underdark. Um, and there's this cool flashback like battle with the Black Dragon. It's the Cult of the Dragon, where it's against some Uthgard tribe that Holga is a part of. Um, and you see that's this graveyard scene. Essentially, it's all these dead people telling the story of what happened to them. It's pretty funny. Honestly, there's a good chunk of it shown in one of the trailers, and I thought that might be like the whole scene, but it's not. It's better in the movie. It's not. They didn't spoil a lot. They didn't give too much away in that trailer. Again, the magic is really cool. It just like feels like Dungeons and Dragons, honestly. And getting to see Neverwinter just looks so cool. Like I play the Neverwinter MMO, and it just looks like Neverwinter for the most part. Maybe it feels a little different at times, right? But looks like Neverwinter. Looks like the fourth edition Neverwinter campaign setting as well. Excuse me. And then Kira, the daughter, is in the movie, and I didn't realize she was. I had read the prequel novels, and she's in that, the Road to Neverwinter, rather. And so it's cool to see her role in story. And then there was also the dragon, Thimbershot, I believe, again, who is very fat. And that was cool. There's the Mimic and Gelatinous Cube. Gelatinous Cube doesn't move at all, it's just kind of an object. Um, but it was still cool to see. Then we have a halfling, which is just funny when it shows up. This halfling shows up as like, this is spoiler part, but I'm not going to spoil a ton of the story. Until maybe I get to the complaints. But the halfling I thought was hilarious when it showed up. And yeah, and then there's one quote I really like that says, "I'm proud of what I did. I'll die a hero." I think that's what it is. I took the note after the movie was over, and that's actually one thing that is more of a spoiler. At the end, like I knew. Okay, so for obviously since spoiler, I don't do spoilers, so it's really weird for me to talk about it. But Holga dies, right? And I knew someone was going to die, and Holga was the best choice to use the tablet to, instead of resurrecting Edgin's wife, to resurrect Holga instead. I knew that was going to happen, but it was still touching when she died. And like it was still touching. That's where I got teary eyed. Um, and then, I mean, my complaints would be that scene where Albert Doric thrashes the Red Wizardress, whatever the heck you want to call her. It's so much the scene. I think it's the first Avengers movie where Hulk just like acts like Loki's a toy and just thrashes him on the ground several times. That was hilarious the first time I watched it. It has no value the second time I watched it, at least for me. And this was basically the same thing. I did not think it was funny, right? It just like I've seen this before and it's not funny on a second time. So I mean, it's not bad. It's just, I mean, like I guess it's kind of, haha, that's funny, but it's not really. So, and also Doric's character doesn't get a ton of development. She seems very shallow. But I've read the novel about her, and she's not terrible. I like her character. She just seems like she just comes off shy almost in the movie because you just don't get a lot from her. Um, and then the paladin. There's a paladin in this movie for a decent chunk of it, and it never mentions what deity he worships. Which I know for a lot of people who play D&D these days, that doesn't matter as a big Forgotten Realms fan, it does matter, okay, to me. I want to know which deity this paladin worships because that, will make the paladin make a lot more sense to me, right? Does he worship Lathander? I mean, I don't know who he worships. I think they mentioned a deity like once. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's when they're talking about this paladin actually they've never met, and everyone in the party besides Edgin is like, oh yeah, I've heard of this person, and I think they mentioned Talona, like some followers of Talona. I believe I need to look that up, but Talona is a evil goddess, right? Um, so I just wish the paladin had a deity. That would have been cool. And then my other big complaint is one that I was so excited when I saw it. Elminster. Elminster's in this movie. Kind of. In a way, it's like if you watch the movie, right? I don't know if it is Elminster. I don't know if it's just some representation of this magical artifact or if it's actually Elminster. I liked originally Elminster was just going to be one of my pros, that I would have mentioned already because Elminster is awesome. He didn't look like what I imagined him. It kind of looks like he's from Calamsham, but whatever. And he kind of like you don't get a ton of him. And like I was like, I could see Elminster acting that way until you get like the last bit of him, and it's when Simon punches him, and this is why I'm like I'm not sure it's Elminster because then Elminster looks up and it's Simon, right? And Simon is descendant of Elminster, but he says like I think he says you're gone. I don't think he says you're dead. I could be misremembering that, but I'm pretty sure he says you're gone, which implies to me that Elminster is dead. I'm like Elminster's not dead, and if Wizards of the Coast is using this to kill off Elminster, then that is probably one of the biggest slaps in the face I've ever had. Personally, like honestly, Elminster is the guy, and I'm already ticked off enough in fifth edition that they don't use him for anything. I think they made him a commander card in Magic the Gathering. That's it. And he's not in anything else in fifth edition unless you count Death Mask, the novel, and novels don't count much for fifth edition content. There's almost none, right? And so I mean, like that kind of sucked. You know what I mean? But it was cool seeing this little necklace that had his little sigil, this sigil right here. And he had the feathers on the staff, right? They don't mention Mistra at all, but the Elminster thing left me like I was like I don't know, like I'm gonna try to overlook this one, but like it's Elminster, you can't just say he's dead. Yeah, what the heck, you know what I mean? Like, because when you do that and you have like the seal of Mordenkainen, and it's like, like that guy's from Earth, he's not even from Faerun, or Toril. So like, and that's fine because he doesn't appear in it, but he's got the seal. And Elminster maybe kind of appears, and they kind of kill him off in a sense. It wouldn't matter to moviegoers, I think. Oh, they're like, oh, okay, this guy is some long dead ancient wizard that is the descendant of Simon. Cool, woo, you know what I mean? But like as a Realms fan, it's like the last we've seen of Elminster wasn't Death Mask. I have not read Death Mask yet because I haven't caught up to all the Elminster stuff, but I've read a bunch of Elminster in other books. And I'm pretty sure at the end of the novel, he's not dead. He's just kind of living in Waterdeep. So, yeah, that if that is what, in a way, I don't want to call this movie canon. In a lot of ways, I don't really consider fifth edition canon at all. It's even worse in some ways than fourth edition, which is saying something. But overall, again, I could talk about the Elminster thing forever. Overall, I did really enjoy it. I had a good time. I think a lot of Dungeons & Dragons fans will. You might get held up on the Elminster thing like I do. But besides that, it's quite enjoyable. So, I mean, obviously, if that's your thing, maybe go watch it, of course. But those are my brief thoughts. I may never do another D&D movie review again or another movie review again. I have not actually watched the original Dungeons & Dragons, which I was thinking I'd probably do a video of when I finally watch it, but I don't want to pay money for it. I hear it's really bad and I can't find it for free anywhere. So, yeah, maybe I'll watch that someday and cringe. So anyways, I enjoyed Honor Among Thieves. It was good for the most part. I don't have really any qualms. So, this one Williams Lyceum. I will catch you next time.